All right. BJ Enright, hello. Welcome to the Innovation Room. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you, Mike? Good to see you today.
Excellent. Good to see you. Thanks again for joining. So you are president of Tradeshow Logic, and
I am.
yes, a little bit delay. And I wanted to start by, when I was pulling together some information on our meeting here, I I was thinking about innovation in the trade show space, and it's, when you think
Mhm.
about it, like it's not the very first thing that comes to mind when you think innovation. You don't think trade shows necessarily, like I go to, software, rockets, things that are like obviously cutting edge, breaking new ground. But then I thought about it and I'm like, that's not true because the very first trade show I went to was Comdex in 97 in Vegas. And that was the place that really got me started on this path of technology. And yeah, I was involved for a few years at the time, but it was the place where all the vendors were showing off their best stuff. And it was the innovative breaking ground.
Mhm.
It was where everyone was showing their most innovative products. And I thought that's probably true
Right.
for most trade show, and that's the point of these things. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that
Yeah,
and
I
how
think
how
that's
you,
what's been missed, Mike.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think, Mike, that's what's been missed the most during, this years plus time that we've been without trade shows and face-to-face events is
Mm-hmm.
that one of the things that a trade show does bring is it's still the best way to launch a new product or a
Right.
new service or a new company, and to reach a broad audience. And the other thing is the whole um, serendipitous nature of a
Mm-hmm.
trade show has been very difficult to replace online. But yes, you are correct. When you think about innovation and, um, aisle carpet and pipe and drape and, um, you know, uh, what is a trade show? It honestly, the base of it up until recently probably has not changed at all. Like my grandfather would probably walk on a trade show floor and go, "Wow, this looks just like the trade show that I went
Mm-hmm.
to, back in the day."
Right. Right. I was at a trade show last November before the pandemic. So it was right before of 19 in 2019. And what was interesting there was they had um, in the partner pavilion, it was for Salesforce. It was Dreamforce. And
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
think they
mm-hmm.
just dump as much money as any company can possibly dump in these things, in this sort of thing. They had,
It's a great event.
they had a digital tree in the middle of uh, the partner pavilion that was unbelievable. I mean, this thing was, um, it was completely digital in the fact that it had, surrounding screens and interactive lights that came down and people that were standing around talking about the different vendors that were there. And then the branches that went out over the tree kind of linked to all the different exhibitors. So it was like this monster thing. And then when you look around, like the what they did just to build out the set or whatever you call it, I don't know, of their trade show looks like it probably took them a year to make all that at least. Do you
Yeah,
find that
yeah.
with your shows and your exhibitors that they want to be able to create this real experiential type of thing?
Yeah, I think more and more the trade show floors are trying to become more experiential, and certainly the corporate events like
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce that you
Right.
referenced are leading the way
Okay.
in terms of creating uh, not as much of a traditional exhibit
Mm-hmm.
floor. So yeah, you're definitely seeing that, exhibitors seeking more engagement and seeking more ways to connect in much more sophisticated with much more sophisticated booths and in totally non-traditional types of exhibits.
Right. Now, so your company, BJ, Tradeshow Logic, you guys have been around for about 20 years. Is that right?
Yes.
How did
Mm-hmm.
you get started
Mm-hmm.
with this, and what have you seen? What changes have you seen over the years with how you manage these types of events?
You know, our when our company started in 2020, and when we started, next not in 2020, in whatever 20 years is from now, what would that be? 2000. Um,
2000, yeah.
can't do very good math, I guess there, Mike. Sorry about that. But anyway, when we started back in 2000, um, we actually started the company with the premise that uh, there was too much equipment, too much of that pipe and drape and aisle
Mm-hmm.
carpet, and that really it was all about meeting the connection. And so we sort of created the Airbnb
Mm.
of trade shows way back then, where we created a technology that allowed exhibitors to order online and to order from different vendors on in sort of an Amazon.com kind of way. And we don't own any equipment, we don't own any warehouses, and that's how we are able to just physically produce an event. So our company is really all about the people managing that event, creating the experience, creating the strategy, and connecting buyers and sellers, and a little bit less about the actually getting, the table or chair
Mm-hmm.
to the booth. And when we started, we were told that that would never work because it would be impossible to ever get exhibitors. And this is only 20 years ago, but it would be impossible to get exhibitors' email addresses, and that no one would ever order online. Those are the two biggest barriers we were
Yep.
given before starting. So luckily that has not been the case. But since then, our business has expanded into, because of the way we partnered with our clients and worked with them, not only on the physical logistics, but that because we're producing their shows in an all different way, that brought us to working with our clients to actually produce the entire show from beginning to end. So from doing the attendee marketing to the exhibit and sponsorship sales to the meeting management, all the way through to the actual physical logistics on site. And what I see changing most there, really, Mike, is in the last year through the pandemic, we've been forced to digitize.
Yeah.
Where we're virtual events. Something, I think I don't know, maybe it was like 2012. I think I wrote a blog about how virtual events were really just an extension of a physical event. And when you look at it now, what happened in the last year is that our industry, for one reason or another, I guess because people would still come to events, I guess because we didn't have to deal and learn the technology, I guess because we were already making money and life was grand. So,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't really dabble in the digital side as much as we probably should have. And this past year and a half has forced us as show producers to really get in and understand what works and what doesn't work about virtual events. And and most are becoming, one of the things that we say internally is that a lot of our customers are associations primarily versus
Mm-hmm.
corporate trade shows, and that those associations need to start to think more like media companies, or someone else will steal their community, right? Which that means that they need to be thinking all the time about how those exhibitors, and really exhibitors is probably not the best word, but how their buyers and their suppliers want to connect in multiple ways, be that on site, be that um,
Mm-hmm.
digitally. And so that's putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the organizer, the show organizer now, because instead of being able to just plan this one event that you planned it for an entire year, you went, you did it, it happened in a physical place for a set amount of time, and then you could go, phew, thank
Mm-hmm.
goodness that's over. Wow, that was fun. Let's plan next year's event. Well, now every single day something is happening that's either leading up to your physical event or coming out of your physical event, and
Yep.
then and so on. So it's that's changing everything, and this is the biggest. I think my grandfather would probably finally come to a trade show now, or go to a virtual event and be like, "What is this?" Like, and be very surprised by all the changes
Mm-hmm.
and what it means.
Right. Now, you with the virtual events, I had the opportunity to attend a few of, not, they weren't yours, but they were, you know, in the software industry. And it was the first time I actually attended one that was designed to be like a live conference, but it moved to virtual. So this particular one historically has been live in person. And then this year, I believe it was maybe the first, the one I was at was the first time it was virtual. And so you log in and it had like the, you know, the virtual lobby. It had all the different buttons that represented, like, if you want to play a game, go over here. If you want to see the partner pavilion, click this button. So it was like laid out to where you were almost standing in the lobby. There's an information booth in the middle, and you just click the buttons and go around. And I found it really efficient, obviously, like, because, you know, you're going to go and I'm just going to browse through everything like real quick. So I went to every room and I read through there's probably 10 or 12 different things you could do from the lobby. I did them all in about 10 minutes. You know, I was just, and I was just getting a rundown of what this was all about. I was a little confused up front, like, what do I do first? You know, like, do I talk to someone at the information booth? All the buttons were the same. So it didn't tell me exactly like, here's the main general session. This where all the speakers are. It was the same button as all the rest of them. So it took me a second to say, oh, general session means that must be where all the speakers are speaking. And that in itself wasn't really live. It was pre-recorded video and you just watched it at your own pace. I'm curious, how does that compare to the type of virtual events that you're producing?
I mean, we've definitely produced and been involved and attended events that are similar to what you're describing. And really in the last year, they continue to evolve every single day in terms of the actual format. And I think what's most important in any virtual event is that you've got to really understand why you're coming together. You know, if it's just a conference and you're just coming for education and learning or CME, that's a very different format than if you're trying to see products and, you know, connect buyers and sellers together and some combination thereof. So really what you need to do first is figure out what you're trying to accomplish and what you want to do. And then you choose the technology from there. But just like you were saying, Mike, you know, your confusion, I think one of the things that our clients found that was sort of surprising is, or where we got brought in to help some of our clients, is that a lot of the technology platforms, and of which there are, I think I heard a stat today that there's now over 350 different companies providing different platforms that do different things, right? And I think a new one enters the market every day. But
for virtual shows,
one of the things, different platforms, that they do different things, right? They have different strengths and weaknesses. But one of the things that, in most cases, they're technology platform providers, right? But they don't want to be the event producer. They don't want to create what's going to happen, how it gets laid out. And so one of the places that we ended up helping our clients a lot was through customer service, you know, through who's really providing that answering when Mike enters the lobby and he's confused and he doesn't know which direction to go. And networking online is a totally different skill set and experience. And so exhibitors and sponsors are learning, how do I connect with buyers online, you know, through events that are produced by an association? How do I do it through my own virtual events? And how do I behave? And how do I drive traffic to my booth? And what do I do? How do I set it up? And what do I need? And, you know, and so that customer support was, I think, much grander than what some organizers thought it would be. And it required a lot of staff and manpower.
So on that point, I did hit the help button, which was, again, the same button that looked like all the rest of them. And I went in there and it was a chat. And so I was trying to find out something specific about, as I was looking through the schedule, I was flagging the ones that I wanted to see. You know, I wanted to attend and you know, and watch. But there was no evidence of where that was being saved. So I had this
Right.
itinerary. I knew that I was saving something, but I'm looking around. I'm looking around like, well, where's the list of things I just saved so I know when they are? And so I went into the help, and I went to the live chat, and
Mm-hmm.
they weren't able to answer my question. They weren't even, it wasn't even like someone wasn't even actually there at the live chat to answer the question, which I thought was odd, because it was actually during the promoted launch of this whole virtual event,
Uh-huh.
like the day one of the event, and they didn't have anyone there to answer my question on chat, which I thought was interesting. But yeah,
Yeah, so I think you could find that. That's the one extreme, Mike, which I feel
yeah,
very sad that that's what happened, because I don't know that some organizers in the beginning, I don't know if they thought the platform would just do it, or they
right.
thought it was just super intuitive. But then on the other side of the equation, another chat function was you would go into the chat, right, and it would scroll down. It would just,
Mm-hmm.
so and you'd see all the other questions being
Sure.
answered. So you'd say, hey, I don't know how to find XYZ. And then the next thing you know, 500 people, like way down here, this is what it got answered somewhere in the
Oh
chat
yeah, yeah.
function. It got answered here. You know what I mean? And so you're saying, hey, wait, where did it go? It was down there. I asked that question. Oh, here's your answer. So
Right,
it,
because it
it,
was
it
just one long
definitely,
thread of everyone's questions. Yeah. Oh
it was
boy.
like a virtual help desk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was an open chat, right?
Sure,
It
sure,
was, like a Zoom meeting, when you
sure.
go in and everyone can chat. That's exactly what it was. You're
Yeah.
in a Zoom meeting and everyone can say whatever. And if you don't answer quick, and, in some of these events that we produced, there was 16,000, 20,000, 40,000. These were not small virtual events with your
Sure.
three best friends in Zoom, and so, if 1% of them has a question, it's a lot of
A lot
questions.
of questions. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you said that you learned a lot over the past year, and I'm sure you had to scramble to figure out this virtual world of events, as did everyone, even the attendees, right? Figuring out, okay, what am I going to
Yeah.
do? How am I going? Which ones am I going to go after and actually attend? You said you did some things right and some things you learned from. What are some of the things that you thought you did right that you're like, okay, we nailed this, and we're really, this is something we can hang our hat on for the next one, for the next show.
I think that on the events that we were involved in, we did anticipate the exhibitor support
Mm-hmm.
that would be required. So I think one of the things that Tradeshow Logic understood throughout this was that the very early on, we knew from our past experiences with virtual events going way back to 2012, that the exhibitor experience was less than stellar.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the customers that we worked with, we basically said, hey, look, here you go. You're doing this fast. You got to get your attendees there. You're working to get the meeting set up. The exhibitor, one of the pieces that was not great, and no one did it great, was to come close to duplicating or replicating the interaction that needs to happen between attendees and exhibitors at a live
Mm-hmm.
event. That just did not happen. Exhibitors were way less than satisfied with virtual events. But what we did with our customers is we said, hey, at least hold their hand through the process.
Mm-hmm.
At least be there to answer their questions, at least empathize with them and understand that they're learning too, and they're learning how to navigate this. And I think that that helped our customers to maintain those relationships. And so, when we look at some of the scores that exhibitors gave to virtual events, ours, were much higher than some of the satisfaction levels with others. So I think that we did well. But there's a lot more to be done on the engagement side. The other thing I think that is great that we've learned is that new audiences have been reached.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at some of our groups, like one of our associations has over 100,000 members, and they never get more than 16,000 in person. Well,
Okay.
what's happening with the other 80,000? Where are those
Mm-hmm.
guys? And I think one of the surprises that we're all seeing is that the overlap between the in-person and the virtual is not as great as what we thought it would be. And so really one of the best things that's come out of this is the opportunity for new audiences and the opportunity, exhibitors were not 100% happy with the in-person events before the pandemic. There was lots of
Mm-hmm.
challenges with that. And one of them being able to track and measure ROI. And that's one of the great things that you can do virtually, right? You can tell where people are, you can tell what questions, you can tell what they tracked, you can tell what they looked at and where they went.
Right.
And so that combination, I think we need to look at the digital transformation that's happening within the event industry as really being a great enhancement. It's not going to replace face-to-face. We still want to
Sure.
connect and meet and go have a beer and
Right.
whatever,
Right.
but we also need a way to measure and prove that we're doing business.
So when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is a similarity between what you're describing and what happened to music in the music industry, right?
Yeah.
And in that, and I was involved in a startup a couple of years back. We were doing live music. We built an app for people discovering an act digitally, and then the app was driving them to actually go see them live, and that was the whole purpose of the app. And that did happen. And what's actually happened over the last year and a half is, if you probably noticed, that every musician and musical act in the world has gone live streaming as they almost like a staple activity that they do on a weekly basis, right?
Yes.
And that's for the same exact reason you said, is they're getting more exposure. They have fans around the world, but they obviously can't play to all those fans live all the time, but they can through a live stream, and they can attract their biggest fans and keep them engaged on the live stream. And then when they do want to plan, as they're planning the next series of concerts in person, they're using all that live stream data to figure out, okay, I have a really good pocket of fans over in the Northeast. The live stream activity was really heavy there. I can see that data. I'm going to plan a tour in that area, and I'm going to engage those people through the live stream
Totally
to get them to the live event. And I could see that happening with this too, where you're kind of using a virtual event as a teaser, almost as a lead in to here's the big, in-person event that's everyone's going to love, because they anticipated the last 3 months of virtual activities. Maybe, I don't know if it will translate, but it seems like it could be close.
It feels, Mike, that's a really good assessment there. And I wouldn't be surprised. And I think what happened in the industry is what's happening to the event industry now. I do think we're going through just a major transformation. And, think about some of the shows that we do, and some of the biggest shows, that in the United States of America, they only occur every 3 years, so
right.
There was a challenge before to stay connected and keep those buyers connected and keep that community connected. And so within all of this is a tremendous amount of opportunity, of which it's weird. It's like our industry, the event industry, would probably, like I said, my grandfather would probably go to a trade show a couple years ago and be like, okay, this is exactly the same. I've been gone for 20 years and nothing's changed. But I think that he would now come back and just be completely amazed at how much of a transformation it really is. And, while we're at the end of, not the end of our life cycle, but in a really mature industry, it's almost like we are in the infancy again and where change is happening literally every single day. What today is totally out tomorrow.
Sure. So let's talk about that. When it comes to the live shows that you're now, replanning, that I'm assuming that the live events are coming back online, or they're coming back in person. I shouldn't say online. That could be confusing.
Both. Hey.
Yeah. Right. Talk about how, what's changed with like the relationship with the convention centers, or the type of environment that's required in the actual, locations where these are going to be held. You know, in the light of this new world, what's changing there?
Mike, I think that's all still really, we're still really early in that. So events are coming back online, I think, really slowly and much smaller right now. I think we will start to see,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for my company, we've only actually produced one physical event so far, and we would normally produce 40 in a
Right.
year. We will produce, I think, 9 physical events, but they don't start until we have one in June
Mm-hmm.
in a couple weeks. And then it kind of starts, and then, you know, September, October, November, it really starts to get ramped back up. So I think that's all new. But
Yeah.
one of the things that we hear exhibitors requesting is, you know, which I think some of us show producers didn't necessarily think about, is that exhibitors are hybrid too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when we think about the whole show and the whole event, we're thinking, okay, now we got to do components in person, we've got to do components online. Which pieces do we do in person? What do we do, you know, year round? Well, exhibitors have also had tremendous success doing their own proprietary events online,
Sure.
and they have reached new audiences. And so they're going to be in person, but they're also going to be broadcasting back,
Mm-hmm.
many of them, that experience and connecting with their remote attendees as well as their in-person attendees in very different ways. And so some of the requests we hear is they're asking things like, you know, does the facility have a production studio? You know, and what we're also hearing from a budget standpoint is that their exhibitors they're trying to preserve their budget for the trade show channel, but it's their budgets aren't necessarily growing, but they have more things to spend on, right? If there's not access to great internet, or if there's not access to a production studio, or they now are doing things in their booths that they weren't doing before that is costing them more money. So definitely there's going to be some pressure on the budget and on the spend. And I think venues will continually need to be evolving to provide different services to facilitate in-person and digital.
Mm-hmm. Are you seeing your, you know, convention centers, are the same venues still hosting, or has any of that changed?
You know, we a lot of the events we produce are on a large scale. So yes, you know, they're in the same venues. I think there's definitely more of a desire, just like with the restaurants, you know, more outdoor space, different
Mm,
kind of space.
yeah,
You know, buildings that are creating new space are looking to create more outdoor space. They're looking to be able to have, uh, you know, to physical distance, even as those requirements are going away, they're still
sure.
thinking about the way that people interact, and health and safety is still,
Right, right.
you know.
Absolutely. So, so you're saying probably another 6 to 9 months at least before you kind of see the in-person attendance really going back to where it was. But do you anticipate within a year that all of the in-person shows will be back in full force, or is it going to be permanently different with this hybrid model?
Well, I think yes and yes.
Yeah.
So it seems like for our fall shows that we have, and what I'm hearing within the industry is that most organizers planned for them to be somewhere down, somewhere between, I know this is going to be kind of a big range, but 30 to 50%. So if you made me like stick a number in the sand and say, you know, what would you plan it at? I would say probably the average is around 30% decline. Um, when we look at our shows, every single one of them that we have coming up are doing better than expectations. So that doesn't mean we're hitting pre-pandemic levels, but we're doing
Mm-hmm.
better than, you know, what we budgeted and planned for. So I think we'll see it come back. I think that people are being surprised. Some of our clients are being surprised because there is a little bit of a pent up demand, and that is real. But we've got to really deliver. If the right buyers and seller connections don't happen, you know, and if we don't deliver the right in-person events, they're now comparing it to another marketing channel. And
Mm-hmm.
so we've gotten just too used to being able to hold Zoom meetings, and so
Yeah.
there will also be, Mike, there'll be just some pieces and parts of meetings and events and business meetings and that just don't need to happen in person anymore.
Right.
So that's why I say yes and yes. Yes, will they go up with, yes, because there may be more demand and it may be bigger and better than ever. And yes, will it be different? Yeah, it's going to be, we're going to continue to be different. But I
Sure.
think in a really good way. I think in a really good way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to getting back to some of these conferences for sure. I mean, I think I definitely appreciate the immediacy of a Zoom call and being able to talk like we are face to face from Atlanta to Chicago, in a moment's notice. That's great. But there's also, like we talked about, is the power of having that in-person interaction. And really that's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what I've noticed over the past year is even though I've had a lot of these meetings virtually, the in-person thing is, it's different, right? And we're missing a bond around how we're building business relationships with people, and those conferences, when you get together with old colleagues or when you get together with groups
Mm-hmm.
of people where now you're hyper connected in person,
Mm-hmm.
is a totally different thing, and I miss it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like we have to, and being in the technology industry, conferences is part of the deal, right? So you kind of need to get to these things to meet large numbers of people in our industry. That's the
Mm-hmm.
only way it's done. Like that's one of the challenges is now for me in technology is where can I go and have a face-to-face with 20 to 30 people in a matter of a day or two? Like
Right.
I can't do
Well,
it.
and think about this, Mike. So this is like my own personal experience, but here we are, one day we have a pandemic and you can't meet in person anymore. You've got to meet online. And so, um, there was, I can't remember, let's just say there was like 3 or 4 major platforms, technology
Mm-hmm.
platforms, but they were open, new ones coming every day. But like I said, there's 350, at
Amazing.
least today, right? So one of the things we did first in the pandemic was we had our team, because we don't want to create a technology for that. But we need to understand the differences and nuances between them so we can help our clients choose the right technology to do what they want to do. So our team needed to get educated really fast on this. Oh my gosh, Mike, it took forever. So think about if we'd have been able to go to a trade show. Like
Mm-hmm.
if we could have gone to a platform trade show,
Sure.
we could have researched them in advance, and we could have been like, all right, we really want to go see these 5 or these 10. And we could have really
Exactly.
met with them and dug in there and figured it out. But instead, do you know how many months and hours of staff time that took?
Yeah.
It cost me, as the buyer, a lot of time.
Yeah.
Now, the seller, in some ways, is finding, hey, I kind of like this virtual event thing because I have my own audience. You're just coming to see me. You're just my people. It's not costing me as much.
Right.
But from the buyer's perspective, it is super inefficient
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
able to really comparative shop and
Sure.
see things all in one place. So,
Right. Right. Definitely. I mean, it's going to have to get back to, and it's going to evolve. I think that's one of the things I'm hearing is that everyone had to scramble and figure out, okay, how do we, if you're a provider, if you're an exhibitor or a seller, how do we get, in front of our buyers and so forth? And buyers, like you say, how are we going to make the assessment on what we're doing? And everybody scrambled to figure that out. But so what do you think is going to really happen? Like, what are you excited about looking out, like say 2 to 5 years for
mhm.
trade show for your company or in that industry? Like what really excites you about what could happen there?
I think for my company, because exhibitors and the exhibitor experience has always been at the heart of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like exhibitors have sort of been taken for granted. There's been this theory, if we build it, they will come, you know,
Mm-hmm.
And so we can just charge them whatever we want. They can pay whatever they need to for the show services. Who cares if we bring the attendees there? It doesn't matter, right? If we build it, they will come. And what we have long believed is that the exhibitors have to really be able to prove out their ROI, and that they are, in many cases, the exhibitor spend is supporting that meeting and making it possible for the attendees to go there at a reasonable price, right?
Mhm.
And so I think one of the greatest things that's going to come out of this is there are going to be more ways to really create greater value for exhibitors and sponsors, both in person and online. And I think those opportunities are still developing, but I think that I think it'll preserve the value of our channel.
Right. Right. That's
There
great.
won't be so much of that walking down the aisle. You want to buy a watch?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
it'll be a much, I think it'll be a much different, more dynamic experience and more targeted,
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. So, BJ, thank you. I know we're running out of time here. Thank you so much for coming on the show here, and we'll have
Thank you,
to
Mike.
regroup in, let's say, 6 to 8 months, and we'll see how things are going and talk about how everything's evolving even further.
All right. That would be awesome. And in the meantime, go to a bunch of trade shows and conventions, will you?
I will. I will.
Okay.
And your company
That'd be
again,
great.
Tradeshow Logic, is tradeshowlogic.com, correct?
Yes, tradeshowlogic.com. Yeah.
Got it. All
All
right.
right.
Thank you, BJ. Talk soon.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.